At the beginning of the 21st century, deep in the heart of Texas, a vision was taking shape in the mind of one of the most influential figures in American sports. Jerry Jones, the owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, was no stranger to big ideas. Since purchasing the franchise in 1989, he had transformed the Cowboys into one of the most valuable and recognizable sports brands in the world. But by the early 2000s, Jones believed that something essential was missing. For him, the team needed more than victories, trophies, and global recognition. It needed a home that reflected its status, ambition, and future. What he imagined was not merely a stadium, but a monumental symbol, an architectural and cultural landmark that would redefine what an NFL venue could be. At that time, the Dallas Cowboys still played at the Texas Stadium, located in Irving, Texas. Opened in 1971, the stadium had once been considered innovative, especially with its iconic hole in the roof, a feature that inspired countless jokes and became part of NFL folklore. For decades, it had hosted legendary moments, from the dominance of the Cowboys in the 1970s to the Super Bowl winning teams of the 1990s led by Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. However, by the turn of the millennium, the Texas Stadium no longer matched the modern standards of professional sports. Luxury suites were limited, technology was outdated, and revenue opportunities were far below what newer stadiums across the league were generating. Jerry Jones understood something that went beyond football. He recognized that the NFL was entering a new era, one driven by entertainment, technology, and global reach. Stadiums were no longer just places to watch games. They were becoming massive entertainment complexes, capable of hosting concerts, international events, college championships, and even cultural exhibitions. Jones envisioned a venue that would stand at the center of this transformation, a stadium so grand, so advanced, and so bold that it would instantly become the crown jewel of the league. As discussions about a new stadium gained momentum in the early 2000s, one crucial question emerged: where would this new home be built? While Dallas itself was an obvious candidate, negotiations with city officials proved challenging. It was then that Arlington, Texas, a city located between Dallas and Fort Worth, entered the picture. Arlington had long sought a defining project that would elevate its national profile. Already home to the Texas Rangers ballpark, the city saw an unprecedented opportunity in partnering with the Cowboys. Local political leaders, including Arlington's mayor and city council members at the time, worked closely with Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organization to explore possibilities. These conversations were not simple. Building a stadium of the magnitude Jones envisioned would require enormous financial resources. The estimated cost ran into the billions, making it one of the most ambitious construction projects in sports history. To make the dream a reality, a combination of private investment and public funding would be necessary. In 2004, a decisive moment arrived. Arlington residents were asked to vote on a proposal that would allow public funds to support the construction of the new stadium. The plan included increases in local sales taxes, hotel occupancy taxes, and car rental taxes. It was a controversial decision, sparking intense debate among citizens. Supporters argued that the stadium would bring jobs, tourism, and long-term economic growth. Critics worried about the burden on taxpayers and questioned whether public money should support a privately owned franchise. When the votes were counted, the proposal passed. The approval of public financing in 2004 marked a turning point. With the backing of Arlington and the green light from voters, Jerry Jones could finally move forward. The dream that had existed only in sketches, conversations, and bold promises was now on a path toward becoming reality. 2 years later, in 2006, construction officially began. The site in Arlington was transformed almost overnight into one of the largest construction zones in the country. Thousands of workers, engineers, architects, and planners came together to execute a vision unlike anything the NFL had ever seen. Jones spared no expense, insisting on cutting-edge design, unprecedented scale, and technological features that would leave fans speechless. From the very beginning, the project carried an air of anticipation. Industry experts, sports analysts, and fans alike watched closely as steel beams rose from the Texas soil. One of the most talked about elements was the massive retractable roof, designed to protect fans from the intense Texas heat while preserving the feeling of openness. Even more astonishing was the center-hung video board, destined to become the largest high-definition screen in the world at the time. It was a statement, not just of wealth, but of innovation and ambition. Jerry Jones often spoke publicly during this period, reinforcing his belief that the stadium would transcend football. He envisioned it as a global destination, capable of hosting Super Bowls, Final Four tournaments, international soccer matches, and world-class concerts. For Jones, this was about legacy. He wanted to build something that would stand for generations, something that would symbolize the power, reach, and imagination of the Dallas Cowboys organization. As construction progressed, the sense of expectation only grew stronger. By the late 2000s, it was clear that Arlington was no longer just a supporting character in the story of North Texas sports. It was becoming a central stage. Hotels, restaurants, and infrastructure projects followed, reshaping the city's landscape and economy. What began as a bold idea in the mind of one man was now influencing an entire region. The dream that started in the early 2000s, fueled by dissatisfaction with an aging stadium in Irving and driven by Jerry Jones's relentless pursuit of greatness, was well on its way to becoming a reality. The birth of a giant in Texas was no longer a question of if, but when. And as the walls rose higher and the structure took form, one thing became undeniable. The NFL was about to witness the arrival of a new standard, forged by ambition, controversy, vision, and an unshakable belief that bigger was not just better, it was necessary. The year 2009 marked a turning point not only for the Dallas Cowboys, but for the entire world of professional sports. After years of planning, construction, political negotiations, and sky-high expectations, the doors of the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, were finally opened to the public. What had once been an ambitious vision in the mind of Jerry Jones now stood as a colossal reality of steel, glass, and concrete, visible from miles away and impossible to ignore. The inauguration of the stadium was not simply an opening ceremony. It was a global statement that redefined what a sports venue could be. From the moment guests, fans, and media representatives began arriving in Arlington, there was a sense that history was unfolding. The stadium's sheer size was overwhelming. With a seating capacity exceeding 80,000 people, expandable to well over 100,000 for major events, it instantly became one of the largest stadiums in the world. The retractable roof, one of its most celebrated features, symbolized the perfect balance between modern engineering and the unpredictable Texas climate. It allowed sunlight to flood the interior on clear days while providing shelter from heat or storms when needed. A technical marvel that reflected the boldness of Jerry Jones's vision. As visitors stepped inside for the first time, the atmosphere was one of awe and disbelief. But nothing captured attention quite like the massive center-hung video board suspended above the field. At the time of its unveiling, it was officially recognized as the largest high-definition video screen in the world. Stretching an astonishing length across the stadium, the screen was designed to bring fans closer to the action than ever before, offering crystal-clear images visible from any seat. Cameras flashed non-stop as journalists struggled to capture its scale in photographs that could never quite do it justice. Jerry Jones stood proudly at the center of it all during the opening events. Surrounded by NFL executives, local politicians, former Cowboys legends, and current players, he spoke with emotion about the journey that led to this moment. He emphasized that the stadium was built not just for football, but for generations of memories. Jones repeatedly described it as a house for champions, a place where history would be written again and again. His words resonated far beyond Texas, echoing across the sports world. The early months following the inauguration quickly proved that the stadium was living up to its promise. High-profile NFL games drew massive crowds, with fans traveling from across the country just to experience the venue. Coaches and players from visiting teams openly admitted their amazement, often pausing during warm-ups to look around in disbelief. The Dallas Cowboys themselves embraced their new home, feeding off the energy of the crowd and the sense that they were playing on the grandest stage imaginable. Beyond football, the stadium became a magnet for global events. International soccer matches were hosted on the same field where NFL games were played just days earlier. Major artists and bands brought sold-out concerts to Arlington, transforming the stadium into a cultural epicenter. The flexibility of the design allowed it to shift seamlessly from sports arena to concert hall, reinforcing Jerry Jones's original idea that this would be far more than a football stadium. All of this momentum reached a peak in 2011, when the AT&T Stadium was selected to host Super Bowl XLV. The announcement alone was a validation of everything Jerry Jones had promised years earlier. On February 6, 2011, the eyes of the world turned to Arlington as the Green Bay Packers faced the Pittsburgh Steelers. Millions watched on television, while tens of thousands filled the stadium, witnessing not just a championship game, but the arrival of a new icon in American sports architecture. The event cemented the stadium's place in history and confirmed its reputation as one of the most important venues on the planet. Yet, beneath the spectacle, applause, and global praise, a small but critical issue had been quietly overlooked. During the initial design and testing phases, most attention had been focused on innovation, size, and visual impact. Engineers ran countless simulations, and officials conducted routine inspections. However, one subtle technical detail failed to receive the scrutiny it deserved: the height of the massive video board in relation to the playing field. At first, no one noticed. Early games passed without incident, and the novelty of the stadium overshadowed any potential concerns. But then, during practice sessions and later in actual NFL games, something unexpected happened. Punts and high passes began to come dangerously close to the enormous screen. In one now famous moment, a punt struck the video board during a game, an event that immediately sparked confusion on the field and astonishment in the stands. Players paused, referees consulted rulebooks, and commentators scrambled to explain what viewers were seeing. The incident revealed a flaw that had not been fully addressed. The video board, while spectacular, was positioned lower than what traditional stadium designs had accounted for. According to NFL rules, the screen was technically in play, meaning that if the ball struck it, the play would continue as if nothing unusual had occurred. Still, the optics were troubling. What was meant to enhance the game had suddenly interfered with it, raising questions about design priorities and oversight. Media outlets quickly seized on the story. Headlines praised the stadium's grandeur while questioning how such a detail could have been missed. Analysts debated whether innovation had gone too far, whether spectacle had overshadowed functionality. Jerry Jones, never one to shy away from controversy, addressed the issue publicly. He acknowledged the problem, defended the design, and even joked that it challenged punters to improve their accuracy. Yet behind the humor was a recognition that the situation was far from ideal. Despite the controversy, the stadium's reputation did not collapse. If anything, the incident became part of its mythology. The AT&T Stadium was so large, so unconventional, that it introduced problems no one had ever encountered before. The league adapted, teams adjusted, and the stadium continued to host some of the biggest events in sports and entertainment. Looking back, the inauguration of the AT&T Stadium in 2009 stands as a moment of triumph, layered with an unexpected lesson. It showed the world what happens when ambition meets reality, when innovation pushes boundaries to the point of revealing new challenges. The overlooked detail of the video board's height became a reminder that even the greatest visions are shaped not just by their successes, but by the flaws discovered along the way. And in Arlington, Texas, that blend of grandeur and imperfection only added to the legend of a stadium that dared to be bigger than anything that came before it. There came a day when the impossible happened, a day that forever altered how the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, was perceived by the world. Until that moment, the stadium had been celebrated almost unanimously as a triumph of modern engineering, ambition, and spectacle. Opened in 2009, it stood as the ultimate expression of Jerry Jones's dream, bigger, bolder, and more impressive than anything the NFL had ever seen. Yet it was precisely this excess, this relentless pursuit of grandeur, that set the stage for an event no one had seriously considered. On that day, the football itself collided with the symbol of the stadium's pride, and in doing so, turned a global icon into worldwide news for all the wrong reasons. The first incidents occurred during official NFL games, not during obscure practices or preseason scrimmages, but under the bright lights of competition. During routine punts and high arcing passes, the ball struck the massive center-hung video board suspended above the field. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. Players froze, fans gasped, and referees looked at one another in disbelief. What had just happened felt surreal. In a league where every inch of the field is regulated, measured, and standardized, the idea that a football could hit part of the stadium during live play seemed almost absurd. One of the most widely discussed moments involved a punt that soared high into the air, only to collide with the enormous screen hovering above midfield. The sound echoed through the stadium, and confusion rippled across the field. Players from both teams looked up, some pointing, others shaking their heads. Coaches along the sidelines reacted instantly, gesturing toward the officials, demanding explanations. Commentators in the broadcast booth struggled to process what viewers at home were seeing, replaying the footage again and again as disbelief turned into astonishment. Names familiar to NFL fans quickly became part of the story. Punters, quarterbacks, and special teams coaches were suddenly drawn into a controversy they had never anticipated. Some players later admitted that the sheer scale of the stadium altered their perception of distance and height. Others joked nervously that they had never practiced avoiding a scoreboard during a game. What was meant to enhance visibility and fan experience had unexpectedly entered the field of play itself. The media response was immediate and relentless. Sports networks replayed the footage nonstop, while analysts debated how such a flaw could exist in a billion-dollar stadium. Headlines questioned whether innovation had crossed the line into impracticality. Late-night shows mocked the situation, and social media exploded with commentary, memes, and criticism. The AT&T Stadium, once praised as a flawless masterpiece, was now being scrutinized as a cautionary tale of excess. If you're the kind of person who feels a chill when a true sports story reaches its turning point, if you're fascinated by what happens behind the scenes long before the lights turn on and the crowd roars, then this channel was made for you. Here we travel through real places, relive decisive moments, and revisit dates that changed everything, from legendary stadiums in the heart of the United States to bold decisions made by powerful owners, engineers, and league officials that reshaped the NFL forever. These are not just games. They are stories of ambition, pride, miscalculations, and consequences that echo far beyond the final whistle. So if you want to keep uncovering the hidden chapters of iconic arenas, understand how a single mistake can alter the legacy of a billion-dollar project, and experience the human side of sports history that almost no one talks about, subscribe to the channel right now. Turn on the notification bell and stay with us for every new story. Because behind every stadium, every field, and every spotlight moment, there is a secret waiting to be told, and you won't want to miss what comes next. At the center of the storm stood Jerry Jones. As the driving force behind the stadium's design, he became the focal point of both criticism and defense. Some accused him of prioritizing spectacle over functionality, of allowing architectural vanity to override practical considerations of the game itself. Engineers and designers involved in the project also faced intense scrutiny, as questions arose about how such a scenario had not been fully anticipated during testing phases. Jones, never one to retreat from public attention, addressed the issue openly. He acknowledged the incidents, defended the overall vision of the stadium, and even attempted to lighten the mood with humor, suggesting that the scoreboard challenged players to adjust their game. Yet beneath the bravado, the situation was serious. The NFL could not ignore a structural feature that directly interfered with play, especially in one of its flagship venues. The league soon stepped in, applying specific rules tailored to the stadium. According to NFL regulations, the video board was officially considered part of the field of play. If the ball struck it, the play would continue as though nothing unusual had happened. While this ruling resolved the immediate confusion, it did little to quiet the broader criticism. Many argued that no stadium, regardless of its grandeur, should require special rules to compensate for its design. Public embarrassment lingered. The stadium, once a symbol of limitless ambition, had become an example used in discussions about overconfidence in large-scale projects. Architects, engineers, and sports executives around the world took note. The incident was cited in professional circles as a reminder that innovation must always be balanced with practicality, especially when the stakes involve live competition and global audiences. Over time, the controversy settled, but it never completely disappeared. The image of the football striking the scoreboard became part of the stadium's legacy, retold whenever discussions turned to bold design choices or engineering oversights. What had begun as a triumphant monument to modern sports architecture evolved into a historical warning, etched into the narrative of the NFL. The day the ball hit the scoreboard marked a shift in how the AT&T Stadium was remembered. It remained an icon, a marvel of size and technology, host to Super Bowls, concerts, and global events. Yet it also stood as proof that even the most expensive, carefully planned projects are vulnerable to human miscalculation. In Arlington, Texas, a single moment of impact transformed admiration into reflection, reminding the world that greatness, when pushed too far, can collide with its own ambitions. As the years passed after the early controversies, the story of the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, slowly shifted from shock and criticism to reflection, adjustment, and maturity. What once seemed like a fatal flaw in one of the most ambitious stadiums ever built gradually became part of a broader narrative about learning, adaptation, and the true cost of chasing perfection. The stadium did not collapse under the weight of its mistake. Instead, it evolved, and in doing so, left behind a legacy far more complex and meaningful than anyone could have imagined when its doors first opened in 2009. In the immediate aftermath of the incidents involving the suspended video board, engineers, NFL officials, and stadium executives worked closely behind the scenes. There was an understanding that removing or radically repositioning the massive screen was neither realistic nor financially viable. The structure had been designed as the visual heart of the stadium, and dismantling it would have undermined the very identity Jerry Jones had fought to create. Instead, the solution came through a combination of technical review and regulatory adaptation. The NFL clarified and reinforced rules specific to the venue, officially declaring the video board part of the field of play. While this decision initially drew criticism, it allowed games to proceed without constant stoppages or confusion. Teams adapted their strategies, especially on special teams, where punters and coordinators became more conscious of trajectory and height. Over time, what once seemed like an absurd problem became a known variable, something players accounted for as naturally as wind or weather in an outdoor stadium. Jerry Jones, whose name had been closely tied to both the triumph and the controversy, also evolved in his public approach. Rather than distancing himself from the issue, he embraced it as part of the stadium's story. In interviews throughout the 2010s, Jones often spoke about innovation as a process that inevitably involves risk. He acknowledged that pushing boundaries means occasionally discovering limits the hard way. This perspective, coming from one of the most powerful owners in professional sports, reframed the narrative from failure to experience. Meanwhile, the stadium continued to fulfill its original promise as a global stage. In the years following Super Bowl XLV in 2011, AT&T Stadium hosted some of the most significant events in sports and entertainment. College football national championship games brought tens of thousands of fans from across the country, transforming Arlington into a temporary capital of collegiate athletics. The Cotton Bowl Classic and other major NCAA matchups reinforced the stadium's reputation as a premier football destination beyond the NFL. The venue also became synonymous with massive international events. World-renowned artists filled the stadium for sold-out concerts, with performances that turned the vast interior into a sea of lights and sound. Global boxing matches brought legendary fighters into the ring beneath the same scoreboard once criticized for interfering with footballs. These nights reminded the world that the stadium's scale, once questioned, was also its greatest strength. For the Dallas Cowboys themselves, the stadium became a place of unforgettable moments. Historic victories, heartbreaking losses, and emotional tributes unfolded on its field. Generations of players, from established stars to young rookies, experienced what it meant to play in one of the most imposing venues in professional sports. The roar of over 80,000 fans, amplified by the stadium's design, created an atmosphere few teams could match. As the 2010s gave way to the 2020s, discussions about the AT&T Stadium increasingly took on a reflective tone. Architects and engineers studying large-scale projects often cited it as a case study, not simply as an example of excess, but as a lesson in balance. The stadium demonstrated what was possible when vision, money, and ambition aligned. But it also revealed how a single overlooked detail could echo louder than countless successes. The price of perfection, as many came to see it, was not just measured in dollars, though the stadium's cost ran into the billions. It was measured in reputation, scrutiny, and humility. The moment the ball struck the scoreboard forced a reckoning, not only for Jerry Jones and his team, but for an entire industry that was racing toward ever bigger, ever more spectacular designs. Yet this reckoning did not diminish the stadium's standing. If anything, it deepened it. The AT&T Stadium came to represent something uniquely human, the desire to build something extraordinary, the willingness to risk failure, and the capacity to learn from mistakes without abandoning the dream itself. It stood as proof that greatness is rarely flawless, and that imperfections, when acknowledged, can become sources of wisdom. Today, the stadium remains one of the most impressive sports venues in the world. Its retractable roof, monumental video board, and vast seating continue to inspire awe. Tourists visit not just to see where the Dallas Cowboys play, but to witness a landmark that changed how stadiums are imagined. And woven into every tour, every broadcast, every retelling of its history is the lesson it quietly offers. The legacy of the AT&T Stadium is not defined solely by its scale or its events. It is defined by its journey. From bold conception to public controversy, from criticism to adaptation, it tells a story where engineering meets ego, where ambition collides with reality, and where learning becomes just as important as winning. In the end, the stadium stands not only as a monument to what humans can build, but as a reminder of what they must remember, that even the grandest visions are shaped and sometimes saved by the lessons learned when perfection proves impossible. If stories like this fascinate you, stories rooted in real events, real places, and real decisions that changed the course of sports history, then this channel was made for you. Behind every iconic NFL stadium, from Texas to the rest of the United States, there are moments of ambition, risk, human error, and unforgettable consequences that rarely get told in full. By subscribing now, you become part of a community that goes beyond the highlights on the field and dives deep into the untold backstage stories, the engineering choices, the powerful figures involved, and the moments that forever altered legendary arenas. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter, because each new video reveals another hidden layer of the NFL's greatest stadiums. Every structure has a past. Every wall holds a secret, and the next story waiting here might surprise you even more than this one.